We're burning the midnight oil on this Batrep as the word of Blake pulls back from the LZ where nuclear weapons could not save them. And frankly, I don't think I can either. The word of Blake is shoring up their defenses with, probably against my better judgment, a gaggle of conventional units, while the Coalition is coming on with Clan Chromium Pigeon and quite a few prototype units for the era, and the Inner Sphere has thrown in quite a few units, including an incredibly weird-looking Awesome. In this particular scenario, the word of Blake has fallen back from the LZ. They are fighting at every opportunity that they can, but their equipment is damaged and out of place. They simply do not have the resources to be able to mount an effective assault anymore, and they're pulling back towards the starport. It is a critical point on Shiloh, and they need to hold it at all costs lest they lose all the initiative to the Coalition forces. It's around this time though, first turn, couple seconds in, we realize that the Awesome isn't an Awesome, or at least the Battlemaster that we had on the board is actually an Awesome. Since I had to set up first before they walked in, I deployed in a long line across the board. I tried not to play my hand too far, or at least devote myself on the northern side or the southern side of the board, and respond in kind. The challengers are along the middle, the LRM carriers in the middle, and the mechs are spread out in such a way that they can move north or south. The air support itself can come down, and they're going to rain in on that Vulture Mark III. That Vulture Mark III is actually a pretty nice mech. I don't know if you've taken a look at it, but it's a lot like the A or Vulture B. But it's got ferro-laminar armor on it. It's cheaty tech when somebody else is using it, but I have to admit, in the future, I'm going to start using that stuff because that is awesome. It drops the first point of damage from any type of hit. It renders an SRM into a 1-point hit. It's pretty nice. And considering that the most of the damage are going to be coming off of those Reavers, it's mostly SRMs on there, so it ends up just tickling them. Now the Vedettes are the Ultra AC5 version. It's the first upgrade when they saw the clans coming, and I get them by the bucket. They just build them everywhere, and there's a reason for that, why they're so cheap. The first shot out of it in the center Vedette is a jammed round, and the thing ends up having to be in forced withdrawal without having done a single point of damage. The Reavers do range in on the Vulture Mark III, do quite a bit of damage with its Ultra AC because the ferro-laminar can only do so much, but it ends up not being all that effective. It's kind of a waste. Sagittarius dash through the southern flank, trying to open up a new objective, while the assault group clusters up on the northern end as the Inner Sphere plods along at 3-5. It's not going to be something the word of Blake has to worry about for a while. At that speed, they got a couple turns. Vultures keep moving forward. It is around this time that the Inner Sphere player starts noticing that there is a method to the madness of the word of Blake. We start moving the tanks forward, we start jockeying them forward and backward, trying to bait them into a center position, while the Vedette at the north tries to hold off an entire cicada. As a matter of fact, it's an impressive feat if it can do that, because it is not a very impressive platform, and there's a PPC on the cicada. It's not that bad. And in order to avoid an entire assault lance worth of fire, he just backs up right behind the hill so that he can take a shot at the cicada and not have to worry about all the problems that his buddies are bringing. Reavers roll back over onto the target and take on that Vulture Mark III that they had tagged before. If they weren't going to kill it the last turn, they're going to try to do it again this turn. And they find him and manage to plug him full of holes. It's fairly fruitful. We open up his back, and even though the ferro-laminar is really hurting the amount of damage we're capable of doing, it's having an effect. But because we're using the strat ops rules for engagement of fighters and how they interact with the table, because as you noticed, it's kind of hard to use the core rules with a map this big without hex numbers on it, it presents a situation where he can just choose to shoot at it at a later point in the path, and it's kind of awkward because he can make aft shots against it, even though it's diving out in the front. It's not without its faults. Not that I'm complaining, it works well enough. And as the Reavers swing overhead, the Vultures open up on them. They're pretty decent anti-aircraft platforms, and they manage to get a through armor crit and put a point on the engine. That's an immediate forced withdrawal as the Reaver will turn around and fly back home for better shores. He actually hit quite a few times with the LRMs. We forgot. We moved on with their Sagittarius, which are swinging around. We came back to it because, I mean, it's an LRM. 5 points of damage. What is it going to do? Yeah, no. It manages to hit the aft. He confirms it for a threshold roll, and it hits the fuel tank, nails it on an 11, and the plane explodes mid-air. It's not without its cause, though. The Word of Blake has put quite a bit of damage downrange. We've managed to actually cause so much trouble that the Vulture falls over, and the rest of the units are now considering their option. The Legacy, however, is hauling it back to the rest of the units that he can get to, because I've been there before. The Legacy is not going to take on an entire assault lance by itself. I have a Batrep about that. It's not a good trade. So the Word of Blake has taken some losses. We've lost a Reaver and a Vedette to mechanical failures already. It's the beginning of turn 3 and we're already a couple units down. I could excuse the Vedette. It's kind of tank crunchy fuel. I mean, they're there to explode, but the Reaver's kind of a devastating loss. It's not a loss that I can take lightly. With the Assault Lance coming around the corner, I have to do something about it soon, so I start limiting my losses by moving the Legacy out. He sees a 10 hex charge with the Sagittarius and decides to go ahead and throw it out there. He needs to slow the Legacy down so that the others can hopefully beat on it at range. I send the Reaver after it, hoping I can put the Sagittarius down, because the infantry and the IFV in the woods certainly isn't going to slow down the assault mechs long enough. Meanwhile, on the other side, the clan mechs start taking on the various tanks that are out in front of them, and they manage to take a lucky shot against the Vedette hiding out in the open and take its treads off. That's an immediate forced withdrawal. The crew will abandon the tank and look for higher grounds. And just as the Vedette is lost, the Cicada slips through the lines, pops its PPC round off, and takes the back off of the LRM carrier, taking another unit that the Word of Blake needs to hold the position out. Even though the Goblin IFE puts on a desperate stand, the entire Assault Lance focuses fire on it and takes it down in one turn. The infantry out there start firing off their SRMs at it, infantry scale SRMs from the 3085 book. I thought it was a different infantry formation, but turns out they're hurling rocks, because you take a look at it, they're pretty awful. And this is the thing about putting movement dies next to the unit. Yeah, it speeds things up, but it also tends to have an effect of making formations of units focus fire on any other given unit, because it's pretty clear what they need to be shooting at, or at least what the 2-hit mod would be. But it's kind of a handicap as well, because you could also inadvertently focus too much fire on any one unit. The charge connects with the Legacy. The Legacy braces and kind of shrugs it off, but nonetheless, the aerospace fighter manages to tag the Sagittarius, doesn't really put it down, overheated, and ended up going into random movement. The LRM carrier is lost. The Reaver has effectively been removed for a turn. I'm reorganizing the entire formation, as even though I might have the initiative on the southern end, having successfully baited him out, I have got problems. I have lost too much stuff already just trying to hold on to them. And even though I might be able to kill them, the 3 mechs down there, I'm not going to be able to do it in time. Nonetheless, the Vulture for the clan opposition is turning around and running away. It took 2 engine hits, I do believe, from one of the Reaver passes. Well, the Vedette that had a jammed UAC has made it off the board, probably for the best at this point. But I can't let the tactical initiative go. He has 2 damaged clan mechs out there for the taking. I move the light mechs and threaten them with their positioning, and he has to respond with the Sagittarius. The Legacy keeps huffing it away because look at all those guys. I can't afford to take on that Assault Lance. Again, this has been a problem I've had before, but it's not fast enough to get away. The light units from the Word of Blake begin harrying the clan forces as they get behind them and manages to absolutely savage the remaining Vulture Mark III. Tactical initiative again is handed over to the Malak as he swings behind one of the Sagittarius and starts pummeling it in the back. If they're going to start reorganizing their forces forward, and I have a couple initiative ticks back, I'm going to send my lighter assets at him if I can. It's just good strategy. Light Ray takes an absolute beating from the Assault Lance. It's not getting away fast enough. It doesn't have the armor to live up to it, and now its left side has been completely ripped open, and it's almost lost its left arm. It's down to one internal structure point as it desperately throws AC rounds downrange, but at this point the C3 is not really helping them. I am throwing the weight of the conventional units at those clan mechs, and I just can't quite put them down. They're holding together with the clan version of ER duct tape, and they just don't die. I lose in the physical phase to them, one of the mechs fall over, and I just call it at that point. We had family obligations to go through, and it was pretty clear where the game was heading. They had a whole Assault Lance that I had barely touched, and there was really nothing to oppose them. I just did not have enough Vedette tanks to let them step over to cause any kind of meaningful difference.